Yo, what is up? Welcome to Ninja Geek Games. It's 44 BC and Julius Caesar has been assassinated and his adopted son Octavian is next in line. But this doesn't sit too well with the conspirators. So, do they sit and discuss this within the Senate? Nope. They plot and scheme to gain enough dominance to become the Emperor of Rome. 44 BCE is for 2 to 5 players, played out over 6 years in a 1 versus many game where potential suitors team up against the Imperium Maius. However, here player alliances can change, and through careful planning and some deceit, the Imperium Maius can change each round. During the game, players will build structures, collect influence and enlist recruits in order to gain enough Imperium to be deemed Emperor of Rome. This game recently smashed its Kickstarter goals and also looks to be going to retail as well. So, let's look at what's in the box. This is a prototype of the game, so the contents you see here may vary from the finished product. The main board is pretty big and has areas for structures, recruits, as well as other cards and denarii here. Structures you'll build and own, where you can then claim any benefits during the game, and some sit along this area of the board at the start of the game. As the game progresses, these structure tiles will make their way down to this area to become available for players to buy. There are 3 different recruits: political, military and social, and these sit at 3 different levels as well as lictor and loyalty cards. There are 9 phases within each round in the game, and this is tracked with the marker here. Also, at times the marker will remind players as to which building structures they can activate during that particular phase of a round. Each round, one player is the Imperium Maius, represented by these tiles, and the Imperium track runs around the outside of the board. Lastly, the Senate tile here is used for endgame scoring. I think the board is well laid out and clear. The idea of the phase marker indicating which structures can be activated at particular points in the game is a nice touch, as you'll see later. What I really like is that for both structures and recruits that will be used in the game, you actually select from a number of types, meaning you're going to have a different setup for each game for high replay value. Also, there are 3 different Senate tiles for some variability in endgame scoring objectives as well. For the player setup, you each receive a player mat and screen of a particular colour representing one of the conspirators, such as Marcus Antony or the assassin themselves, Brutus. The screen will hide your actions later in the game, and your mat has areas for your cards and resources, as well as areas showing icons of other players in the game. Each player also gets a handful of meeples representing architects used to identify structures that you have built. Game runs over 6 rounds, each made up of 9 phases. Now, I'm not going to detail every single phase, but instead discuss some of the mechanics of the main aspects of the game. The rules indicate that the player with the most Roman nose is the Imperium Maius first. My gaming group always argue whether it's me, Liam, Chris, or Biggest Dickus. He has a very Roman nose. If you know, you know. During the game, you'll pay for structures with denarii and activate them at specific times for resources, recruits and actions. Each time you build a structure, you'll mark a side area with your architect meeples. There are limited structures in play, but more enter the board as the game progresses. As mentioned, most are activated at particular phases in a round, but some are activated only once on construction. You have a limited number of meeples and they are never returned from the board, so your choice in tile must be chosen carefully. You'll also enlist recruit cards of various types, paying for these with different types of influence tokens. Your choice of buildings and recruits depends on how you want to develop your game, as well as your plans for either staying as or removing the current Imperium Maius. Each of these cards also provides Imperium a source of victory points, and all are in limited supply. The meat of the game comes in the commit phase, where players secretly play their recruits and other cards to their player mat along with their influence tokens. Now, each player mat has areas for cards that are either political, military or social, where the aim is to produce as much authority as possible in each of those fields. But the current Imperium Maius player does this first, followed by the other players termed the suitors. The Imperium Maius plays their cards to the required field, and this is the authority value here, and they can play as many cards as they want or have. Now, this value in the square box is ambition and does not alter the authority value unless the Imperium Maius can play support influence to that card. One support token provides this value to the sum of the authority in that field. This is all done in secret, behind a player screen and before the suitors. This is because the suitors first get to openly discuss how they will attempt to gain authority in the 3 fields. The suitors all play cards in the same way as the Imperium Maius, but support influence is played very differently because the suitors cannot support their own recruit cards. The suitors make use of these images underneath each field that have other player icons that matches their playmat. Instead of playing influence to their own cards, the suitor will instead play the token to one of these icons. This means I am now supporting this player's recruit card in the military field. And players can place any number of tokens in any of these areas except for the Imperium Maius. This is where table talk becomes important. Openly, the suitors discuss how they are going to beat the Imperium Maius in 2 of the 3 fields by gaining more authority as they get to pool their values together. Now, when placing cards in support, the suitors want to beat the Maius, but they also want to beat the other suitors in those fields to gain victory points and potentially take in the role of the Imperium Maius in the next round. Therefore, the suitors may break promises on who they want to support or what cards they'll play, as again, it's all carried out in secret. If the suitors' combined value beat the authority value of the Maius in at least 2 fields, the role will change hands. However, supporting other suitors' cards with influence does provide you with denarii and loyalty cards that can be used as influence later and give victory points at the end of the game. Defeating the current Maius each round is not always as easy as it seems, and you'll need to work together even though suitors pool their authority in each field. Firstly, player screens are not used for most of the phases in a round, so you have at least some idea of the other player's likely actions or resource pool. Also, the Maius controls 3 tiles that add authority to their fields too. Lastly, in the centre of the player's icons on your player mat is a charisma area where any number of influence type can be placed. The number of tokens here is used to break ties anytime authority is equal amongst 2 or more players. After 6 rounds, an endgame score phase takes place to determine who has the most Imperium from buildings, owned and played cards and Maius tiles to name a few, with the winner becoming the Emperor of Rome. This game has so many avenues to direct your game plan, it becomes a very strategic and immensely thematic game, as structures you build and recruits you enlist will all affect your turns in the commit phase. The table talk is a great element of the game, possibly one of the best moments in any game I've played where this is required. It's important to note that at one point you'll need to discard cards and resources to a minimum of 7 combined, so make sure to note what other players have left before the screens are deployed. The little wascal has spirit. Again, if you know, you know. Supporting other suitors to beat the Maius, as well as gaining denarii and loyalty over hoping to remove them as a contender for that role, is a difficult decision and one that may be remembered later. Loyalties change most rounds, which makes this game really fun and exhilarating to play, and apart from the negotiation and commit actions, the other phases are quite short. 44 BCE is a great game of social interaction and resource management that plays very well, particularly at 5 players. The game does include a 2-player variant, but I've not played that yet. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. This is Ninja Geek Games. Cheers.